So let's talk poetry. Now, what exactly is poetry? It's pretty much exactly like it sounds. It's you interpreting 3 different poems as part of your piece. Now, poetry, a lot of people ask what exactly you need to do poetry. In order to do poetry, you need to choose poems which are related to and organized around a central theme. Now, what do we mean by theme? A central theme can be a unifying theme. It can be like a poet or a statesman, a philanthropist, an ideal, a philosophy, nature, element, a community, trees. The list goes on and on and on. But what you need to do is you need to find some sort of a theme and then find poems that are going to fit that theme. Specifically, you need to find 3 poems that are going to unify around that theme. Now, again, I just listed a whole bunch of themes out there. There's a ton more, but you need to come up with that theme first. And then you need to find some poems that are going to center around that theme. So you can use dramatic style poems, you can use humor style poems, you can use a combination of the 2. Maybe you start off light with your first poem and then get more deep into your second and third. But you need to have those poems that center around that theme. Now, some cool opportunity for you. This is the one interpretation, the one acting style event where you can write your own poetry and perform your own poetry as part of the event. So the poem needs to either come from a published source. Again, we talk about that in some of the other events where it's got to have that ISDN number, or it can come from you. But whether it's published through those sources or for you, that's kind of where you can go. Now, as far as competition, what quantifies as a poem, it's got to be at least 8 lines long in order for you to perform it. So just keep that in mind when you're looking at pieces. So again, you need 3 poems, no fewer than 3, but I guess you could do a few more as long as they're within the appropriate length. But you don't want to do too many because that's going to bog down the theme. So most people keep it right at 3. This is an 8-minute piece. So again, you're going to have to divvy up those 3 poems or cut them down to fit within that 8-minute time length. There is a 30 seconds grace on the end of that. But again, as I always advise my students, don't really count on that 30 seconds as part of your speech. That's really more of a just in case of emergency during the performance scenario. Try to keep it 8 or a little bit less than that. Now, as you're performing, each poem is going to need to be introduced. And the introduction comes from you. You need to write the introductions. So what you're going to do is first you're going to do like a little short, maybe teaser poem. And then you're going to have an introduction. And in that introduction, you're going to introduce your theme. You're going to introduce why this particular poem, the one you just read as the teaser poem, and the one that you are about to read, you're going to explain why those are, a good fit of the theme. And the last thing you're going to say in that introduction is going to be the name of the poem followed by the author. So then you read or you perform poem 2. And then you have another introduction where you introduce the final poem, which will be poem 3. Again, why does it relate to the theme? And then you're going to go and do that poem and perform it. So make sure you have all of your sources ready because you're going to need to cite those as part of your performance. Introductions need to be written by you and memorized. So similar in style to prose, if you've watched that video. When you are reading and performing your poems, your book needs to be open. Your performance book needs to be open. And then when you go into your transition mode, the book closes. That's a visual way for us to tell if you are on script or off script. So once again, you're going to need one of the little black performance books. You can kind of see a picture of it here on the screen. They're like $5 on Amazon. Just go and get those. Then what you do is you take your poetry and you get some black construction paper. Cut the construction paper to fit nicely within the binder. Give it a nice 3-hole punch where the holes line up because the binder is much smaller than a normal one. And then paste your poetry onto the black paper. The black thick construction paper gives it a nice look, a nice professional look, and also makes it a lot easier for turning pages. You need to practice the turning of your pages because you don't want a sloppy look as you're shuffling pages that you may have folded in half, and just shoved in there as you're doing your piece. It needs to be smooth, it needs to be polished, it needs to be ready to go. Past that, performance-wise, just make sure you're staying in one place. You might take a step a little bit forward or a little bit back when you're doing your transitions and your introductions and such. But mostly you're going to be staying in the same place. This isn't like dramatic interp or humorous interp where you can move, have a little bit more movement. You need to stay in the same place and perform that poetry. So past that, just go out and find your poems. Find something that you're passionate about. Find a theme that you really like. Find poems that are going to really back that up, and then practice performing those the best you can. Come see me for coaching sessions. I can walk you through my own feedback on there and make sure everything's going great. But poetry, again, a great way to both perform poems as published poems and your own work. So a lot of cool opportunity here in poetry. The big thing for me as a coach is just to find poems that, again, I've mentioned this several times in the video, poems that you can connect with. But it's not just really that connection. It's also poems that you have the ability to perform. Poems that are within your range, and poems that can really move a judge and take them somewhere. I've heard a lot of poetry pieces in my time. Sometimes the poetry just really moves you, and it can be really fun to hear, and sometimes it's really not, because the poems are just not that engaging to me as the judge. So really try to find something that you think might engage the crowd, engage the audience, engage those who are listening, and then put that together, as that's going to go over better than just, here's 3 poems that I found. Make sure you have a really powerful presentation so you can wow those judges in poetry.